Chapter 8 Sliding Doors. After she had some time to process what had happened, Avery wrote the most beautiful and heartbreaking letter to her father. Dear Dad, I'm writing you to get to you again because I hope that as your daughter, I will be able to get through to you. But I don't even know if I can at this point. You admitted to me that you have been reckless and self-destructive. You need to stop and fix your actions before you lose everything that is good in your life. I know right now you are unhappy with your life and yourself. You need to put your life into perspective. You live in New York City, one of the greatest cities in the world, and have a beautiful house in Southampton. I know that you are unhappy with your job, but it was your choice to take on that responsibility. You could have left and tried something else, but you didn't. You can't blame mom for your unhappiness. You had this job long before you met her. If anything, I would hope that you can see mom brought you the greatest happiness and love that you experienced. Me, your only daughter. We have traveled the world and taken vacations yearly. Do you know how many people can say they have this? It is a very small percent. Think about when we went to Africa and we saw all those families with no shoes and clothes. People have to walk miles just to get water. You have a healthy daughter and a wife who loves you more than life itself. Mom has stood by you through everything. She sat by your bedside for 6 months when you were going through your depression. Even in October, when the first article came out, she denied it to protect you. She did it to protect our relationship and your business. How could you sit there at dinner when you came to visit me during Parents' Week when I went on about how both of you could never do this to each other? You didn't even blink. We were a trifecta and you broke us. What you have done and are still continuing to do is now forever damaging. You have no one but to blame but yourself. It is about time you stop acting like a teenage boy and take responsibility for your actions. My father, who would drag me to church every Sunday for 13 years, would never do this. My father, who would tuck me in and pray with me before I went to sleep when I was a little girl, would never do this. My father, who has always put me first, would never do this. At this point, what I decide and what mommy decides is up to us. We have given you multiple chances. I don't want it to be this way, but you have given us no choice. You broke our hearts repeatedly. You told me you would do better and try to fix things before I left, but you have not done one thing to make anything better. You show no remorse. Where's the heartfelt apology to either mom or me? Where are the flowers and the cards? Where is any effort to show you actually care? If you don't want to do that for me, fine, but at least please do it for mom. You owe her and your marriage some remorse and a real apology. This whole thing is an embarrassment to mommy and me, and you have not once thought about how it would affect us. I am ashamed of you. How can you possibly work on a marriage and still continue seeing another woman? That does not make any sense. I know you say that you have been angry with mom for a long time, and that there are issues you have had that I won't understand. You know it was never her intention to hurt you. It was your fault for never speaking up to fix things. You then blame the TV show too. But who are you kidding? You love being on it. You say you hate our lifestyle, but you know you love going on vacations and being at our house in Southampton. You were just as lost and confused. You claim that this is your way of getting back at mom for how she has hurt you over the years and that everyone has affairs. Do you realize how crazy that sounds? You try to make up excuses for everything you have done to justify your actions, but there is no possible justification for this. You have hurt mommy and me beyond words. You have played with her mind for months. You have cried, telling me you pushed her too far, past the edge, and you are afraid you will never get her back. You told me you never want to lose mom or me because we are the two most important people in your life, but you never tried to actually work on your marriage. Mom was there for months, knowing you were having an affair, and she tried to work things out with you because she loves you so much. You may say you lost your love for her, but I don't believe that. Even if you are not in love with her, deep down, you still love her and care about her. Honestly, you don't even know what you want. You kept changing your mind with mommy like a light switch. You told me that you don't even care about this woman and you see nothing with her in the future. If this is the case, why would you keep seeing her and continue to do damage to your future with mom and me? How dare you bring her to our house that I grew up in Southampton, We have endless memories in that home. That is the bed where you and your wife have slept for 18 years. No sane husband would ever bring his mistress into his family home. You know, Mommy came to Southampton to tell you that you could move back in. She had every right to kick you out of the house and pack your things up. You destroyed her mental health. You never respected her wishes or space. You never gave the marriage a chance. One day you will reflect and realize how badly you messed up. You knew we were in the public light. You knew once the article in October came out that you should have stopped. All of this is your fault, so stop blaming other people and trying to rationalize your thoughtless decisions. Do something for me now to fix things. I know that my real dad would see all of this. I know that my real dad would be appalled and never forgive himself for how he disgraced and hurt the two people who love him more than anyone on this earth. You are my father, but you haven't been acting like one. It is time for you to fix the damage. I need you to make changes and show an effort, even if you disagree. You need to show you care about us. We were three musketeers, the three best friends. You and I had the best relationship. I see light at the end of this long, dark tunnel, but it will take time. Please reflect as you read this letter a few times. I miss my dad. I hope that one day soon I'll have the dad back I always knew and put it on a pedestal my whole life. Love, your one and only daughter, Avery. The next few months were some of the darkest of my life. The experience of seeing my daughter suffer while my marriage was collapsing was more traumatic than the 3 years I spent watching my mother die of leukemia. After he read Avery's letter, it seemed like Mario wanted to try to make things work between us. As hurt as I was, I just wasn't ready to walk away from him. We decided to try going on some dates, and by March, he had moved back into our apartment. We went back into marriage counseling, but the sessions were very tense because I felt Mario was being impatient with me. On March 14th, Avery was in town, and Mario and I celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary. We opened a bottle of champagne, drank a toast, and went out to dinner. He had made a reservation at Rosa, this very romantic Italian restaurant, but it was the saddest anniversary of my life. It was so awkward. We didn't kiss, we didn't hold hands. There was so much distance between us. But then the next day, we went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art with Avery, and being together as a family felt so right. Avery published a selfie of us on Twitter, and the press went crazy with stories of how I was back with my estranged husband. It felt so good to be connected as a family. But that night, Mario seemed to shift again. I remember at dinner, he was throwing bills at me, saying, I need to pay this bill and that bill. Later, Avery said to me, That's your whole problem with Daddy. He's always throwing bills at you. He expects you to do certain things, but then gets mad at you when you do. Daddy never stepped up to the plate. He says he feels like we left him hanging in the wind, but he never tried to be in it. That night, I got angry with Mario, and I remember him saying that the window was closing on us. How can the window close on a marriage of 22 years? It felt like he hadn't owned up to anything, and that he hurt me for months and then was impatient with me when I was trying to heal. In May, Avery and I decided to give Mario an ultimatum. Cut off all ties or lose your family. I was done with all the back and forth. I felt like he would make a little progress, but then something would happen and we would fall back even further. Since I knew him so well, I could tell when he was pulling away because he was connecting with someone else. Mario agreed to change his phone number, and I was determined to make things work this time. It was during this very tenuous and fragile period in my marriage that we filmed the reunion episode for season 6. At that time, Mario and I were in such a precarious place that I didn't feel like I could speak about our marriage or his infidelity, and I had promised him that I wouldn't. When Andy Cohen questioned me, I shut it down. I got defensive, and I refused to comment. I regret that now. I have always prided myself on the type of person who speaks openly and honestly about all aspects of my life. I should not have allowed someone else's needs to dictate my behavior. I signed on to do a reality show, and even though what was going on in my life at that point was happening off camera, the collapse of my marriage is part of my reality. For the rest of that summer, we worked on our relationship. I felt Mario was connecting with me. We were going to counseling, and things were getting better. Then, one night, he was late coming home from work. I remember he called to say he was at Grand Central Station and was on his way home. 45 minutes later, he still wasn't home. It takes 15 minutes to get from Grand Central Station to the Upper East Side. When he finally got home, I remember him giving me some story about having to take the bus because the train was too crowded. And when I questioned him about it, he got very defensive, so I dropped the subject. I thought, We're seeing the therapist again tomorrow. I'm not going to upset the apple cart right now. I took a sleeping pill and went to bed. In therapy the next day, I said, "So, Mario, have you seen that girl recently?" I remember he said, "Why are you asking me that now when everything is great with us?" I said, "I'm not saying things aren't good, but I am your wife and you are my husband. I'm allowed to ask the question." Eventually, Mario did admit that he had met with her on the street. I remember he told me that she had contacted him because her father was ill. She was very upset and needed to see him. I do believe that up to that point he really had been trying. Nevertheless, that was my breaking point. I just couldn't do it anymore. I began to feel that he was just not happy with himself, and if he wasn't happy with himself, how could he be happy with me, or anyone else for that matter? For months I had tried to help him, tried to help us, but I felt like he just kept pushing me away. On August 7th, 2014, Avery helped me put up a post on Twitter announcing that I was moving on with my life without Mario. I was about to start filming a new season of Real Housewives. It was time for me to take back control of my life and begin a new chapter on my own. Ironically, it turned out to be the same day that Bravo aired the reunion episode in which I would refuse to answer questions about what was going on with Mario. Although we were separated and I was trying to move on with my life, Mario moved back into our apartment the following September. He stayed in Avery's room, but it was difficult to coexist like that. I felt like having him in my space while I was still licking my wounds was excruciatingly painful. Despite everything we had been through, I don't think Mario understood why I needed space. Once again, over the next few months, he seemed to go back and forth between wanting to move forward with our separation and impatiently wanting me to take him back. I felt as if I had been emotionally abused for a year and I needed time to heal, but I couldn't bring myself to ask him to move out again. At that point, because his business, which had been in his family for generations, was in serious financial trouble, I was worried that if he did not have some kind of stability, he might have a breakdown. That fall, we started filming season 7 of Real Housewives. I think Mario was hurt that he found out about it through the press. I remember we argued about me filming in the apartment. I thought it would help if he had a place of his own, but when I told him that I had looked at an apartment for him, it only seemed to upset him more. For the first time, it occurred to me that Mario felt that the show had ruined our marriage. When the Real Housewives of New York City came into our lives, Mario and I were both at professional crossroads. I had a 7-figure business, but after 20 years of running my own company, I was starting to feel burned out. Although I was successful, I was open to change and ready for a new challenge. At the same time, because its lease was up, Mario's company had recently moved locations, which shook things up and made him unhappy. Meanwhile, things in his line of work were becoming internet based. In order to keep up with the times, I had been encouraging him to develop a website. The main reason I initially agreed to do the show was that I thought it would help showcase the website. I wasn't looking for fame or fortune. I was making great money and I was happy with my life. I think at first Mario loved being on the show with me. He wrote animated and entertaining blog entries, commenting on the show, and even took the spotlight in a couple of episodes when he went toe to toe with Jill or Luann. Although I wasn't looking for it, the show opened up so many doors for me, and being the ambitious businesswoman that I am, I took those opportunities and turned them into one success after another. As I became more successful on the show, I think Mario began to feel that he was fading into the background, that I wasn't being a team player anymore, and that I had somehow left him behind. Ironically, the very thing I did to help my husband now seemed to have ruined our marriage. Mario and I had been through so much together. Over the course of 2 decades, we raised a child, traveled the world, built 2 homes, and supported one another through all of our parents' deaths. But once I started doing the show, my life began to move in a different direction and his in another. The underlying foundation of our marriage began to shift, and I didn't realize he was unhappy until it was too late. Most men define themselves by success. Even if the man isn't the dominant one in the marriage, I think it must be emasculating if the wife's multiple businesses are successful while the husband's business is falling apart. I remember Mario used to always say that his business was like a clock. It would never make a lot of money, but it was always very consistent until it wasn't. I think he must have been overwhelmed by all the problems and couldn't see a way out. I have always told Mario that I didn't think a man's worth is measured by his financial success. We run with a very affluent crowd, and I've known women who are married to billionaires and they are still miserable. If a friend showed me a 21-carat ring her husband had given her, I never felt jealous because I always felt good about myself and was happy in my marriage. Being a billionaire does not make you a good husband or father, but I think Mario got so caught up in striving for a certain lifestyle that he lost sight of that. A year after the story of Mario's affair broke in the press, we did come close to reconciling. He called me on my birthday in November and sang happy birthday to me and told me he wanted to make our marriage work. There were moments where we would connect and I would soften towards him. I could almost see a light at the end of the tunnel for us. But ultimately, I began to realize that he was still going through whatever it was that had caused him to stray outside our marriage in the first place. Even though he wanted to work things out, it didn't feel like he was putting any energy into the marriage. I had reached the point where I couldn't be with him if I didn't feel like he had the energy to make it work. Maybe we would have had a chance to save our relationship if he hadn't kept moving back into our apartment while I was still healing. I think it was too much pressure on both of us. Looking back, I don't believe Mario was ready to really make our marriage work. I'm not sure he will ever be. When you're with someone for more than 20 years, he or she becomes a part of you. I had been with Mario almost my entire adult life, and walking away from our marriage has been the most painful thing I have ever had to do. Mario and I always had passion, we always had love, and we were always simpatico. For more than 2 decades, we walked side by side in perfect step with each other. His thought was my thought, his heart was my heart. Even now, with all the stress and the pain we've been through, he is still the love of my life. How do you separate from someone who's a part of you? It's like taking Siamese twins and ripping them apart. Over the past year, when he was ready to come home, I wasn't ready to take him in. When I was open to resolving things, he would retreat. We were like sliding doors. The opportunities come and go, but we never connect. It's not the first time we've been in that place. We very nearly missed the opportunity to come together at all. Before I was engaged to the doctor, we had gone out on one date. We had a great time and were very attracted to one another, but somehow we got our wires crossed. We had planned for our second date that Mario would take me out on his boat. He had said, Ramona, I'm going to pick you up on Saturday, take a change of clothing, we'll go out on my boat, and then we'll go for dinner. I'll call you early Saturday morning. That Saturday, I waited for his call, but by 11 o'clock, my phone still hadn't rung. I figured he was probably in bed with some chick from the previous night. The longer I waited, the more I got worked up. I thought, how dare you stand me up? So I called him. When he answered the phone, his voice was hoarse and he sounded congested. I'm really sick, Ramona. I'm sorry I didn't call you. I was hoping I'd feel better, he croaked. He totally thought he was making it up. So I just said, that's okay, feel better, and hung up. 2 days later, he left me a message. Hi, Mario. Hi, it's Mario. Call me. That's it. Just hi, Mario. Hey, it's Mario. Call me. My sister's reaction was, what kind of message is that? We both said that he should have at least apologized for standing me up, so I never called him back. I found out later that he was upset with me because he really was sick and I never called him to check up on him and see how he felt, which is why his message came off a little cold. We have a very different interpretation of why our second date never happened, but the one thing we can both agree on is that we had chemistry that was powerful between us. After that, we both got sidetracked by other relationships for a while, but we'd run into each other at the gym from time to time and flirt. When we finally reconnected a few years later, it felt like fate. The day that Mario called me out of the blue to ask me out again, my life changed forever. For the first time in my life, I knew it was possible to be in a loving, supportive relationship. I loved Mario more than I could have ever imagined possible. He was my lover, my partner, my best friend. For most of our marriage, he wasn't intimidated by my success. In fact, he was always very proud of my endeavors in business. I remember he would joke, Ramona, you know how to bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan. I always felt like he loved that I knew how to make money and be a homemaker. He had always been totally and unconditionally supportive, but I think once he turned 60, something must have snapped, and suddenly he began to see my success differently. By that point, his business had been struggling for years, and I think that had chipped away at his self-esteem. Meanwhile, I was busy branching out in different directions. I was becoming more successful and spending more time away from home. Even though there was no way I could have foreseen the impact on my marriage, there was a part of me that was apprehensive about starting the wine business because I was already so overextended with my other businesses and filming for the show. I remember at one point I even said to Mario, I don't know if I should do the Pinot. I think more than the show, it's the Pinot that really destroyed my marriage. I was filming for 5 months of the year, and then in another 5 months, I was on the road every week, as well as traveling 1 week every 3 months for HSN. On top of all that, I was raising my daughter, helping her get into college, running 2 homes, doing charitable work, and being social. I love doing the Pinot, I still do, but it was all consuming, and for a while it took over my life. I was talking to a friend recently who said that people step outside the marriage because something has already broken down from within, sometimes even years earlier. I'm very strong and outgoing. I know what I want and I go after it. I'm direct and I speak my mind, but I'm not always sensitive to other people's feelings. Mario is the polar opposite. He's very warm and sensitive, but he can also be very passive and uncommunicative. Initially, that was what drew us together. For years, we balanced each other out, but somewhere along the way, the thing that made us work together became the very thing that tore us apart. I think I became too strong for him, and he began to resent me for it. I asked myself over and over after 20 years how we could have fallen apart so quickly and painfully. I think the real reason our marriage failed is that we had a breakdown in communication. It boils down to the simple truth that I wasn't attuned to his needs, and he wasn't articulating how much he needed. Resentment built up until it finally broke us. I believe that when a spouse strays outside of a marriage many years, more often than not, it's not usually about the partner. I think it comes from a place of deep unhappiness, and instead of communicating with their partner, their spouse goes looking outside the marriage for something to make him or her feel whole again. My advice to anyone who's contemplating stepping outside a marriage because he or she thinks a connection with someone else will fill the void is to go first to your partner and communicate by saying, I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel good about us. Can you talk to me? Can you hold me? I need special attention. An affair is a quick fix, but it's not a solution. The underlying issues that cause you to behave in a self destructive way will be there, and now you have dragged your entire family down with you. Try counseling or at least make time for a quiet dinner together. In marriage, even if there's still passion and there's still love, it's easy to fall into living parallel lives. Unless one person says, I'm in pain right now, the other person has no way of knowing and can't help. Once communication breaks down, wounds will fester, and even the strongest marriage can fall apart. Of all the things I've been through, this is by far the most painful. I used to think the hardest thing was watching Mario deal with his anxiety about his company. I remember waking up in the middle of the night thinking my life was a nightmare because my husband was so upset and couldn't get out of his own head. But at least then I felt like he still needed me. At least he was there by my side and he would say, I love you and thank you for supporting me. I think maybe the reason why I stayed in the relationship longer than most women is because I don't like to fail at anything. And the last thing I ever want to do is fail at my marriage. This is the hardest thing because I don't understand it. I wish I could fix things, but I can't. I actually said to Mario in therapy once, I wish I could take all your pain away. If I could, I would take it all away. I would take all of Mario's pain away because I loved him so much. I believe if his business were doing well, we'd still be happily married. It's not like Mario and I haven't endured tragedy. I think it was only when his self-esteem began to deteriorate that we started to fall apart. Looking back, I think he was in the midst of a midlife crisis. It can happen to anyone, male or female, and it is often triggered by such factors as a child leaving home or struggling or failing businesses. These potential traumatic life events can result in an overall sense of dissatisfaction within oneself, which can last for 2 to 6 years. I feel such sadness that I have lost my partner and my best friend. When I think of life beyond my marriage, it's very discouraging. I'm not so much worried about meeting someone else. There are plenty of men out there. It's more about finding a soulmate and having a deep connection with someone with whom you want to spend the rest of your life. If I want to be in a relationship again, I'm going to have to learn to be softer. I'm a strong, independent woman, and that's intimidating to a lot of men. One of the best things about Mario is that he loved me for me, and I never had to pretend to be someone I wasn't. I believe that things happen for a reason, and that maybe this has been some kind of blessing in disguise for me. Maybe Mario and I filled our roles in one another's lives, and there is a better life waiting for me in the future. For many, many years, we had a great marriage, and together we raised a beautiful daughter who has grown into an intelligent and ambitious young woman. Maybe we just outgrew one another. We see the world so differently now. I feel like Mario wants to sell both of our homes and retire. To me, that's unthinkable. He's only 61. He's going to live another 30 years. I feel like he lost his purpose in life, and I don't believe in selling our homes and retiring will make him happy if he has no direction. I can't imagine being with someone who doesn't want to work for the next 30 years. I don't care about how much money I have. I will always want to be involved with something and will never have too much idle time. I still have as much ambition and energy as I did when I was 30, maybe more. I need to feel motivated and mentally stimulated. I believe that Mario gave up on himself, on his business, and on us. I think somewhere along the way he got lost. I tried to help, but you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. That can only come from within. I draw strength from knowing that I was a good wife and that I did try to make my marriage work. I know that some women might think that if their husband had sex with another woman, they would dump him that day. To that, I can only say easier said than done. You can't judge me until you've lived in my shoes, until you've been married for over 20 years to a man who's always a good husband and a good father. People have indiscretions. They can fall off the cliff, and sometimes you have to try to forgive. I myself have been guilty of judging other women. I made comments on the show that I can now see were hurtful because they were based on ignorance. Now that I have gone through a painful separation myself, I realize I should have been more understanding of the women in my life who have gone through a similar experience. Both Sonia and Luann went through painful separations, and looking back, I see that I could have been more supportive. The first time I saw Luann on camera, while we were filming season 7, she was having an estate sale to sell off the furniture from the home she shared with her ex-husband because she had bought a new house in Sag Harbor and was ready to move on. I went over to her and took her off to the side. I told her that I wanted to say something to her and that she didn't have to respond if she didn't want to. I said that I wanted her to know how sorry I was for the way I behaved and the things I said to her when she was having problems with her marriage and going through a divorce. She told me she appreciated my apology, but I think she was reluctant to let her guard down with me at first. The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Over the course of filming season 7, a true friendship evolved between Luanda and I, and we have both been supportive of one another. I'm so grateful to all the women in my life for showing up for me and supporting me through this dark period of my life. Without their friendship and continued support, I would have never been able to handle what I was going through. I do believe in forgiveness, but it's difficult to forgive because people who can't accept responsibility for the harm they have caused you. I feel like I've been Mario's punching bag and that he blamed me for everything that was wrong with our marriage and his life. I don't think he has ever truly been willing to take responsibility for his actions. Although it may have been a symptom of his unhappiness with himself and our marriage, it is not my fault that he had an affair. I've read that when one partner has an indiscretion and betrays the other one, because sometimes it's the man and sometimes it's the woman, it takes a good 2 years to repair the damage. I would be willing to put in the work, but I don't believe that Mario is capable of that kind of self-sustained self-reflection. I think he's too fragile. Obviously, Mario and I have come to some sort of resolution, but at this point, it's more financial than emotional. It's sad that 20 plus years of marriage can be reduced to distribution of assets in the blink of an eye. We were a two-income family, and because of my business, I was able, with Mario's support, to earn the money we needed to acquire our two homes. I think Mario wants me to agree to sell both our homes, but I want to keep the house in Southampton. I've been in our condo on the Upper East Side for 19 years. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm looking at apartments in the city now to see what's out there in my budget. Maybe it's time for a change. I don't think Mario understands why I want to hang on to the Southampton house, though. I think to him it's just a roof and four walls that have a set financial value. But to me, that house is so much more. Avery and I have so many memories there. It's painful to think of losing that house. I have always believed that the three things in life you need to be happy are your partner, your career, and your home. I have lost all three before, and I was able to rebound and find myself in that place again. I have lost the love of my life. My career and my businesses are in flux. but I don't want to lose my homes as well. At this point in life, the idea of rebuilding from scratch is overwhelming. Thankfully, Avery has come through all of this with her spirit intact. I always tell her how proud I am of her and the amazing young woman she has become. Avery can be very hard on herself, especially about schoolwork. I remember during that very stressful year when she came home for winter break, she was beating herself up about her grades. I took her hand and told her, Avery, getting all A's doesn't matter. You are so unbelievably special and smart. I know that in life, you will succeed in a huge way. Despite all the pain she endured, she worked hard all semester and got herself into the University of Virginia. She is in love with school and is finally having a true college experience. I visited her there and agree that it's the perfect place for her. Avery has taken me with her to frat parties, and we have become closer than ever this past year. She has become as much my friend as she is my daughter. We see UVA as a gift for her after all the pain she has been through. Finally, my daughter is happy again. I don't know what the future holds for me. For the first time in my life, I can't see where the road ahead leads. Maybe that's why this is happening. Maybe my challenge right now is to embrace the uncertainty of life. Every day is a struggle, and there are times when I still can't believe this is happening to us. What gives me the strength to go on is my faith in God. I pray to God every day for myself, for Avery, even for Mario. Because of everything I've been through, I know that I'm strong enough to handle anything life throws at me. I have always been independent, always stood on my own 2 feet. Whatever happens with my marriage, I know that I will be okay. I learned that you just have to face whatever life throws you head on. Some days I feel strong, other days not so much. But I wake up every morning and put one foot in front of the other until I find that I'm moving forward. Whenever things feel hopeless, I hear my mother's voice. You must have faith in God, Ramona, and you must have true faith in yourself. Always know that if you have faith, true faith, you can accomplish anything. Despite everything she went through, my mother never gave up, and neither will I. Life is a roller coaster, or in my case, it's a Ramona coaster. Sometimes it's thrilling, sometimes it's terrifying, but you just have to raise your hands in the air, throw your head back, and enjoy the ride. Acknowledgements. First, I would like to thank all of my fans and the love and support over the years and this most difficult recent journey. To my mother, through her, I became the strong, independent woman I am. She taught me to be directed and positive, and that I could attain anything in my life. To Mario, I thank you for being a great husband and father for so many years. Through your love and support, I accomplished so many things. Avery, you've been my shining light through some of my darkest moments. I look at you and I see a woman who is as beautiful inside as on the outside. You have wisdom beyond your years. You have a great soul, heart, and such compassion. The love I have for you surpasses anything I thought possible. You inspire me to embrace my new beginnings. Thanks to my managers at NBTV Studios who have helped me through this exciting process. Lastly, to everyone at Bravo, the journey on RHONY has taught me so many things about myself. And to Andy Cohen, who has given me his encouragement and helped me be me. The end. This has been a Pop Goes the Book production.